We emphasized on the critical success factors for winning in a win-win relationship. We said there must be a balance. We also said the issue of integrity, transparency, even no holding of trump cards that can tilt the cards even negatively, unfairly in your favor. Okay, and it also has to do with patience, because it's all about building relationship. The focus is on relationship, right? Okay, and that's where we stop. So I said at this point in time, I want you to listen to these principle of the win-win as explained by the Harvard University professor who I so much respect, and who explained this. So please join me as we do this together.
As I said before, this Harvard model of negotiation is based on 4 principles. Before we go into these principles, we might want to reflect for a second, why principles? Why not rules? And that's quite interesting that the Harvard people choose to go for principles and not for rules, because if you have rules like in laws, chances are very high that that is too linear and too strict, and that people simply think if they follow these kind of rules, everything will be fine. Whereas if you have principles, it is much more organic, it's much more wider, because you have lots of ways how to fulfill those principles. So it is important to realize that the Harvard people choose principle for cooperation and not rules. So that because cooperation needs the freedom and the creativity. So let's go for these 4 principles. If you remember, we talked about, when we talked about the 5 ways of how to deal in a negotiation, that we said, okay, we do have these high interest or low interest in relationship, and we have the high interest or low interest into the issue you want to have. And let's assume for a second you're negotiating with somebody you like and you find very sympathetic. Then it could be that you have a tendency to give in and to accommodate to the other person, so that you have a tendency to play lose-win. Or on the other extreme, you don't like the other person. You might even hate the other person. And then it is possible that you have a tendency to play win-lose, because you don't like the person, you don't care for the relationship. So the Harvard people said, okay, in order to avoid these risks, that the quality of relationship interferes with your interest in the issue, you should separate them at all. So the first principle is, and that's easy said and hard to achieve, separate the person from the issue. In real life, that would mean you can negotiate very hard, but you should never be hard on the person, unfriendly and so on and so forth, because it is in your own interest to understand the interests of the other people, and therefore the other partner is not your enemy, it's actually your partner. Otherwise you don't get what you want. Because otherwise, if you could simply order what you want, you wouldn't negotiate. So the other party is your partner. So the first principle is separate the person from the issue. Easy said, hard actually to live. The second principle we already heard when we illustrated with the pumpkin example. If you remember, 3 people had a position. They all wanted the pumpkin. Since there was only one pumpkin, it was not possible to give everybody the pumpkin. There was too limited resources. The solution that was not found based on the position and focused on the position, but oriented on the interests of the people. You remember, one wanted the shell for a Halloween mask, the other one wanted the soup, so he needed the meat, and the third person simply the seeds. So the interest, on the level of interest, it was possible to find a solution that everybody made happy, so a win-win solution. So the second principles of the Harvard people for cooperation is you should not negotiate position focused, but interest oriented. And later, when we come to the U model, I will show you what kind of questions you have to ask in order to examine the interest of people who are negotiating. The third principle now is that, and that is, if you're actually looking for a trick for win-win, you might find it here. The Harvard people found out that sometimes cooperation is not possible because people who are negotiating are going too fast, too quick into solutions. You hear a problem and you immediately suggest a solution. And if all parties are doing this, chances are very high that you then only negotiate these kind of positions and you end up with a compromise in the best of all worlds. In order to get to the win-win, they suggest now a different approach. They said, based on the interest, you should first develop criteria that must be fulfilled by a solution that you could say yes to. Or in other words, what conditions must a good solution that you could say yes to fulfill? Just to illustrate this principle a little bit. Just assume you want to invite somebody out for dinner for a restaurant. And you want to make sure actually that the person you invite to actually likes the restaurant. So you could ask this other person, how would you realize that the restaurant is a good restaurant for you? And then immediately the person would tell you some conditions that must be fulfilled by a good restaurant. For example, a small menu, because a small menu for this person suggests that it is actually fresh cooked. Or it might say a certain quality of light. So, and then you could elaborate a little bit more what kind of light the person means, like candle lights or whatever. Or that there's a certain quality of hygiene, or and so on and so forth, music and so on. So you would get a whole set of criteria that must be fulfilled. And the interesting thing about the criteria is there are much more restaurants than only one restaurant that would fulfill the criteria. So working with criteria kind opens a world of lots of options. And whereas positions, it must be we go to chez Felix, for example. Yeah? So the third principle is, before creating a solution, agree on certain principles that must be fulfilled by a solution that you could say yes to. And so at that stage of the negotiation, we would have a set of criteria for party A, and we would have a set of criteria for party B. And you will find a win-win solution in that moment where you find one option that fulfills all criteria of party A and all criteria of party B. Win-win. So this is how we get win-win solution. And the fourth principle is, and this is based on the research that people like to choose. So the Harvard people suggest before you actually choose a solution, you should have different options to choose from. So they suggest don't develop only one option that then is the best solution, but maybe 2, 3, or 4 options, and then take the criteria and evaluate your options by the criteria to find the best option. So that, and by doing so, the solution that was found by the parties will be much more sustainable because they also have the sense they have actually had a choice. So just to repeat these 4 principles of the Harvard model of negotiation. It is separate the person from the issue, negotiate not position focused but interest oriented, develop first criteria that a good solution must fulfill, and develop several options to choose from. So if you follow these 4 principles, chances are very high that, that you actually go for cooperation and that you avoid competition. And in the next chapter, I will then guide you through a pathway, through conflicts, how actually to do this.
Okay, class, awesome. I want you to focus on what I have put here as the 4 principles of the Harvard Business School model for negotiation. It's like a summary of what I've taken you through in the win-win negotiation model. The first thing that was emphasized is separate the person from the issue. Okay, particularly if you are someone who is, you are high on relationship in terms of your own focus, rather than high on issue. Okay, so if you're high on relationship because you are emotionally involved, saying separate the person, about whom you are making the decision or about whom you want to take the action, separate that person from the issue, face the issue. This is why in most cases, marital relationships also go hurry and people enter into what they call, unreconcilable difference, because they are focusing on the persons and not on the issue. When you focus on issues, even you would not be so much emotionally clouded as to be able to see the way forward. So this is very, very important. Separate the person from the issue. The second is said is that you must negotiate based on interest. What are the interests? Don't forget that pumpkin example that I said and that we emphasize here. Okay, what is the interest? Not just on position. Don't reel in your ears on position. The third is the fact that you must develop good criteria that the good solution must fulfill. So both parties, what are the criteria you want, you will say yes to? And when both parties has listed it, then find options of solutions that falls into even the yes category of both parties. And that's how you have a win-win. And that is, how you differentiate compromise from cooperation. Please, you see, this is not compromise. What's the traditional and the principle negotiation focus on? So compromise. But here is cooperation. Okay, the traditional, is all about competition. The principle negotiation is all about compromise. However, the win-win negotiation is all about cooperation. So we say it's all C's. The first C of competition is where the traditional negotiation operates. The second C of compromise is where the principled negotiation even takes place. While the third C of cooperation is where we find the win-win. And based on the Albert principle, these are the 4 considerations for a win-win negotiation. Awesome. All right. I hope it's clear. Okay. I hope it's clear to everybody. Hello. I need feedback. I hope it's clear.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So tell me the first C that resonates with you when you want to describe traditional negotiation. What's the C that resonates with you? Yes, please, anybody? Okay. What is the C that resonates with traditional? What's the C that resonates with principal negotiation? What's the C that resonates with the win-win negotiation? Let's write it on the chat box. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. The first C. Or if you want to also speak, I can see someone's mic is open. If you desire to speak, Zakaria, Abiba Zakaria, you may want to speak to us. What is the first C that resonates with traditional negotiation, and the C that resonates with principal negotiation, and the last C that resonates with the win-win negotiation? Abiba, do you want to try it? Oh, okay. Abiba, you have closed your mic. What of Afolayan Ganiat? You want to try it? What's the C that resonates with traditional negotiation? What is the C that resonates with principled negotiation? What is the C that resonates with win-win? Others, please go on the chat box and put it on the chat box. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, I can see someone. All right, win-win is common interest. All right, common interest, C. Okay, There's another word for common interest. Anyone knows the other word for common interest in win-win? Another word for common interest in win-win is what? It's called cooperation. Cooperation. Okay, so what is the C that resonates with principled negotiation? What is that? It is called C. C what? Compromise. You compromise based on your principle. Compromise. Thank you very much. Owade Femi, thank you very much. Compromise is what resonates with the principled negotiation. What is the C that resonates with the traditional, very common kind of negotiation what we do every day? The traditional negotiations, one particular C describes it in a very, very plain way. What is that C? Anybody? Ibrahim Abdullahi? Okay, conflicting interest, yes, but there is a C that better describes it. Just like we said, cooperation, compromise, there's a C. It's called competition. I love that. That's good. Femi Okade, thank you very much. Competition. Okay. So the first C, okay, that shows us conflicting interest, okay, which is the hallmark of the fundamental traditional negotiation is competition. It shows conflicting interest. The second C even is compromise, and this second C is a hallmark of principled negotiation. The third C, which is cooperation or common interests, is what distinguishes the win-win negotiation. Thank you very much. I love this. I love your responses. I love the class. Keep it coming. Thank you very much. Let's look at other tidbits about negotiation very quickly. I will say there are several steps in arriving at any negotiation process. And don't forget, I said the process of negotiation is much more important than the substance of negotiation. The substance is important, nonetheless. However, the process of negotiation is far more important. What are the considerations in process of negotiation? One, you prepare and you plan. This is where you get all data, do research about the area of interest and the area of influence. In negotiation, these are issues to consider. Preparing, who will be the best person even to present your case. Preparing, you gather all the data, all the facts, that is number one thing in the process. So part of the process also gathering facts around the substance. It's very important. So if the process is hurriedly done, you may find out that your negotiation may not, at the end of the day, give maximum return to all parties involved. This is very, very important. So planning and preparation and planning, they are the first step in your negotiation process. Secondly, you have to define the ground rules, the no-go areas. In principal negotiation, this is where you place on the table your scope. This is a no-no for me, so please, no. This is where the open disclosures are made. This is where the transparency is critical. Define the ground rules. That's the second stage in a negotiation process. The third stage in the negotiation process, now clarify. You want to be seen to have had an understanding of the ground rules laid by the other party. You want to clarify that you have an understanding of the interests that the other party has declared. All right, so you clarify. Then the other party may also want to justify at that point in time why they said this is our ground rule. this is our interest. You want to justify, just shedding more light to stage 2. That is what stage 3 is all about. Stage 1 is preparing and planning. Stage 2, defining the ground rules, the areas of interest, the scoping, the no-go areas, even these are principles and all that. That's in stage 2. Stage 3, clarifying, shedding more light to stage 2 by justifying and all that. That's what you do in stage 3. In stage 4, the bargaining process starts. And in win-win, it is seen as a problem-solving scenario. Okay, so the bargaining, the exchange, of viewpoints even happens in stage 4. Bargaining and problem-solving. This is where even not only have we distilled the interests, okay, then we, not only have we set criteria for what will make you to say yes. Okay, conditions that will make you to say yes. That is in stage 3, or you have done all those justification in stage 3. So you now look at all the brainstorming options that gives us alternatives that we can say yes to based on the conditions we have stated in stage 3, the justification. So we do all the brainstorming. The brainstorming happens in stage 4. All right. And in stage 5, we sign the dotted line. We close the agreement, we implement. Okay, stage 5, you sign the agreement. This closes the negotiation process. Stage 1, again, preparation and planning. Stage 2, you define the ground rules, principles, you do the scoping and all that. Stage 3, you clarify, shed light